What's the worst? Do you know what happened to your loved one, or have no idea? I know it's hard to decide which side to support. As painful as it may be, some people want to know the scary details of homicide investigations in order to find closure. But some people can't imagine what their loved one went through in their last moments. They think that not knowing is bliss. In 2005, the Smith family was desperate to find out what happened to their newlywed son who went missing. George and his wife Jennifer had just gotten married 11 days before this terrible event. They were on their honeymoon. Investigators quickly came down to two options: either an accident or foul play. However, this didn't really help George's family understand what happened. All of these twists and turns, like the fact that unreliable people are also on vacation and there is an unexpected murder investigation, leave a lot of questions unanswered. The most important one is, where is George Smith? Father George Sr. and Mother Maureen had George Allen Smith IV on October 3rd, 1978, in Glenville, Connecticut. The Smith family had a liquor store called Coscob Liquors. George's dad ran it. The business did very well, and the name was well known in the Greenwich area. But for the Smiths and the people in the area, it was more than just a store or business. Everyone worked there and shopped there, knew each other, making it feel like a family. The Smith family was able to afford to live well, feed their children, and pay for their schooling thanks to a business that had been going for 38 years. After graduating from Greenwich High School, George went to Babson College in Massachusetts. He learned about business in college. He worked as a computer data mining analyst in Boston for a few more years. George was definitely smart and driven. George had everything he wanted as a child, but that didn't make him a spoiled rich kid. He lived a simple life and worked hard. It was competitive, hard, and fun for George to work in Boston, but his heart was still back home. That's why he chose to quit his job and take over the family business. His dad was a great teacher for George, and with his help, George learned how to run a store pretty well. After a long time, in 2002, George was at a get-together with his friends when he ran into Jennifer Hagel. She worked as a first-grade teacher and had lived in Connecticut her whole life. George and Jennifer hit it off right away. They were like two puzzle pieces that were meant to fit together, and they began dating right away. Jennifer was loved by George's family as well. She was gorgeous, young, and driven, and she made George whole in every way. Jennifer and George got married at the Castle Hill Inn with a view of the water after being together for 3 years. Their wedding looked like it came straight out of a fairy tale, and everyone had a wonderful time. Jen and George had planned their honeymoon after the wedding, just like every other couple. Royal Caribbean International was the company they chose for the cruise. The cruise went through the Aegean Sea and made stops in Greece, Turkey, Italy, and other beautiful and seriously out-of-this-world places. It lasted 2 weeks. From Barcelona on June 29th, the couple got on the MS Brilliance of the Seas, ready to enjoy their first days as husband and wife in the middle of the ocean. But this honeymoon would not be romantic or dreamy at all. Instead, it would turn into a nightmare that would ruin George's family forever, leading them to search for decades for their son, who went missing from the ship in clear blue water that was dangerously deep. This kind of true crime video makes it easy to get caught up in the drama and forget that the people in it are real people who went through real tragedy. It's simple to lose touch with these kinds of events and think, that could never happen to me. Everyone thinks they are safe until they aren't. For instance, Bank of America just recently admitted that they had a huge data breach that put the private information of thousands of people at risk. The really shocking thing is that they didn't tell any of these victims for months. Not only is this an unusual case, but most companies wait an average of 277 days before telling the public about a data breach. That's almost a year. This means that someone may have had access to your personal information, like your banking information, for months before you even know about it. It's really scary that crimes like this happen all the time. It was a calm day at sea on July 5th, and the cruise ship was sailing through the Aegean Sea to its next stop. A passenger on deck 7 looked out her window around 8 a.m. to see if she could see the sea and the sun shining together in harmony. But it wasn't the blue and yellow that caught her eye. It was the red smudge on the ship's canopy that seemed to go on forever. She was lucky that she didn't ignore what happened and told the cabin crew right away. Not long after that, people on the cruise ship were scared and freaked out because someone had fallen off. After some time, the ship's captain went into the room where the blood was coming from. It was cabin 9062, which Jennifer and George were staying in, but they didn't know that at the time. Well, it didn't take the captain long to figure out that something bad had happened in that room. The room was a mess. It looked like someone had gone through the whole place and thrown everything on the floor. The bed was also a mess. It looked like someone had walked on the floor of the cabin, and there was an odd chair sitting right up against the glass railing next to the balcony. The glass also had what the police later called a hip impression on it. Someone seemed to be perched on the railing by the hip, very close to the edge of the ship. Also, there were 2 very noticeable red marks on the sheets. Each one was about 2 centimeters long. The blood test unfortunately showed that it was George's. There were also red marks in different places, like on the ship's awning. But the couple from cabin 9062 could not be found. Not only that, but the sight of the red, leading from the balcony door, scared everyone. They knew that something terrible happened in this cabin on deck 7. There was something they didn't know, but first they had to find the people who were staying in the cabin. It didn't take them long to figure out that Jennifer and George Smith were there. There was still no sign of 26-year-old George 2 hours later, but Jennifer was found in the end. She was at a spa getting a massage that she had planned ahead of time. Jennifer was shocked and worried when the captain and other cabin crew told her that her husband had gone missing. George hadn't been seen by Jennifer since the night before. He was now gone, leaving a very creepy trail of questions. A couple of hours after the broken-in cabin was found, around noon, the Turkish police were called to the ship to start looking into what happened to George. The police wanted to talk to Jennifer about what happened because she was the only one who saw George the night before. They also looked at the security cameras and figured out what happened the night before. In the eyes of the police, Jennifer's actions were not normal. When she woke up the next morning, she didn't look for her husband George like she had planned. Instead, she went to the spa, which really shouldn't have been on her mind. Still, the police were interested in who the couple had been with the night before. They thought that everyone who was with George should be talked to. Jen said that she and George started talking to Josh Askin, a 20-year-old American passenger, as soon as they got on the ship. These 3 people went to different places and had a great time together for the first 4 or 5 days. They ate delicious food, explored interesting towns, and enjoyed the beauty of the world. Jennifer says that the couple and Josh chose to go to the casino on the night of July 4th. Right there, Josh and George were having fun while Jennifer played poker. After that, they also went to the disco. They drank a lot that night and lost a lot of money at poker. On top of that, investigators looked at the security footage. The last time George was seen was in the casino around 2:30 a.m., but he was never seen again. The detectives knew they had to talk to Josh to make sure Jennifer's story was true. Josh had a lot to say about that night when they found him. Josh first said that Jennifer and George did not leave the disco together. Jennifer was with Lloyd, the casino manager. They were getting used to being around each other at the casino, even in front of George, Jennifer's husband of a few days. Jennifer was also seen staggering out of the ship's disco around 3:30 a.m., leaving George with his new friends. Lloyd's key card also showed that he returned to his room around 3:25 a.m., which was interesting. Because of this, the detectives became very wary of Jennifer and Lloyd. Their stories were very different, and it looked like they were more than just friends. After leaving the disco, were they still together? What was going on? The detectives were not sure what to do. But when 3 more people joined the investigation, things were about to get even more complicated. Greg and Zach Rosenberg, who are cousins, and Rusty, who is one of their friends, were there. Jennifer and Greg, who is 19 years old, were playing poker alone. The rest of the group was with George and Josh. The 3 also went to the disco with the group after the casino. The 3 men were Russian, but they lived in New York and had American passports. The group of young men had also had too much to drink, and they were also being loud and annoying. The men on the ship were told not to be given any more alcohol or have it brought to their rooms by the crew. What that didn't stop, though, was Zach, Greg, and Rusty. With George's help, they had sneaked in a bottle of absinthe. See, the 3 of them bought absinthe while they were docked in Greece. Since passengers, especially those under the age of 21, weren't allowed to bring alcohol on board, George hid the bottle in his pants to help them out. You should know that absinthe is very strong. The amount of alcohol in this bottle was between 40 and 70%. It is legal in Europe, but the European Union has strict rules about what can be used. The crew on the ship, including the caretaker, saw that the 3 of them, George and even Josh, drank a lot of absinthe. It wasn't just the guys who drank a lot that night. The trio, Josh and George, did too. By the end of it all, Jennifer was also very drunk, especially after 2:30 a.m., and she was also very lost, as the security cameras showed when they saw her at 3:30 a.m. A lot of people saw her leaning on Lloyd and getting into a fight with George, which ended with her hitting George pretty hard. If George and Jennifer were fighting, or just completely drunk, it's not clear. But Jennifer did leave the disco at 3:30 a.m., and the same cleaner who saw the guys drinking absinthe helped her to the lift. But this is where the police saw something strange. Room 9062, which was on deck 7, was to the left of the lift. However, Jennifer went the opposite way, turned right, and was later found asleep in the hallway. She was so drunk that a female officer and 2 guards had to push her to her room in a wheelchair. When Jennifer and the guards walked into the cabin just before 5 a.m., it was very quiet because the curtains were closed all the way. While the police were trying to figure out what was going on, a couple right next to cabin 9062 came up to them and said they had heard a lot of fighting. The couple was sound asleep when they heard yelling, moving furniture, footsteps, rustling, and then a loud thud. Before Jennifer was wheeled into the cabin at 4 a.m., everything took place. They did tell guest services about what happened. After this, the man next door also opened his door and walked into the hallway. He saw 3 men standing there, but couldn't figure out who they were. A woman screamed, and there was a noticeable thud sound that other passengers and witnesses heard, but no one said that a woman was inside the cabin. They only saw 3 men leave the room after this strange event, but they saw 4 men enter the cabin. Everyone was interested in this fact. Did George do something before Jennifer was wheeled into the room? Was he with the 3 Russian men he met at the casino? Did George fall by accident, or did someone push him? The 3 men who met the young couple at the casino were looked at very closely by the police. At about 4:05 a.m., George's keycard showed that Greg, Zach, and Rusty went into cabin 9062. The couple next door saw the 3 men in the hallway and went to another room. The most terrible thing about it all is that George's body was never found. It was not possible. Without a body, it would also be hard to prove murder or other crimes. A lot of people have different ideas about what might have happened to George that terrible night. The first one makes the most sense: a theft that goes wrong. Zach, Greg, and Rusty may have been looking for travelers who were easy to trick into giving them money by getting them very drunk and trusting them. It was also clear that Jennifer had given George a very expensive watch as a gift, and Jennifer wore a huge, incredibly expensive engagement ring. Witnesses also said that George and Jennifer were not afraid to brag about how rich they were, and they had tens of thousands of dollars on them. It's possible that the 3 of them found out about this and made George and Jennifer drink a lot of alcohol and absinthe on purpose to knock them out. Besides that, the cabin was a mess. They might have been after money. If you remember the 2 red marks on the sheets that were about 2 centimeters long, detectives say they were caused by someone pulling on George's watch hard. The second idea is about a strange accident. The men really did get so drunk that they couldn't go back. So, it's possible that George fell overboard while trying to figure out where he was, and no one could save him. The people in the group were drinking absinthe, which has a lot of alcohol, and the active hallucinogen thujone. But since the absinthe was bought in Europe, where strict rules say that absinthe must have safe levels of thujone, this theory doesn't seem as likely because it isn't based on evidence. The FBI joined the investigation at the same time, and their main goal was to talk to everyone who was with George and Jennifer on that terrible night. Jennifer and Josh both took polygraph tests, and while Jennifer passed, Josh failed. A strange videotape of the 3 Russians was found. In it, they were joking about what happened, saying things like, "We taught him how to paraglide without a parachute." Also, they were heard saying over and over, "We never saw him." That's it. It's really strange to say that, especially since the paragliding detail suggests that George went overboard. What's the deal with the second sentence? There were many people who saw the men with George that night, so it's clear they were there. No one knows how they thought investigators would believe this. Anyway, the FBI questioned the 4 men, including Josh, in 2009. Zach and Josh were strangely vague, and they kept bringing up the Fifth Amendment, which said they did not have to testify in court. Greg was the only one who told the truth, and even that information wasn't very clear. As Greg says, the men's only way to explain what happened that night was to order room service. This was already strange because the cruise ship staff had been told not to serve the men anything else that night, and it looked like that meant not giving them food. Plus, Greg can't remember who ordered room service. All he knows is that it was ordered at some point. What Greg knew for sure was that everyone was very drunk. Greg's account of what happened was also all over the place, but he did say one thing for sure. Whatever happened to George wasn't by accident. He didn't say anything else, but he did say that that terrible night, something crazy happened that would soon be found out. but he wouldn't live long enough to help the FBI. In December 2019, Greg's body was found in his car in front of his house, having been shot multiple times from close range. What's so creepy is that Greg's death is still a mystery. I mean, it's kind of handy. It's strange that after Greg says something about George's death being found out soon, he ends up dead. You just can't brush it off like it's not a big deal. The sad and mysterious disappearance of George Smith shocked his family to their core. The Smith family couldn't believe what they were hearing when police told them over the phone that George had probably gone overboard. It's scary when your son goes missing, but it's even scarier when he's on a different continent and probably in very deep water. But it wasn't that easy. The Smith family put a lot of pressure on the police to solve the case quickly and give George justice. The public was asked to help solve the case by offering a $100,000 reward for any information about where George went. The Smith family also wanted to stop doing business with Royal Caribbean International because they weren't interested in finding out what happened to George. The cruise line tried to keep everything quiet and even cleaned up the cabin, which could have been a crime scene, within hours of George's disappearance, which is crazy. People think that the cruise line just didn't want to get bad press. The Smith family thought Jennifer was guilty too. They thought she was too cool, calm and collected. Also, the fact that she didn't look for her husband the next morning, but instead chose to go to the spa, didn't help. But to be honest, I don't think this is too strange. In fact, Jennifer probably woke up with a really bad hangover. Yes, the room was a mess, and she would have seen that. But they had both had a long night, so the room was going to be crazy. It wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that she didn't see the blood on the sheets because she got dressed and went to the spa to get over her hangover. However, that is just my opinion. The Smith family thought Jennifer was the main suspect for a long time, but for some reason, Jennifer didn't seem to want to talk about what happened. It was against her to talk about what happened in public. But Jennifer's defense is that the FBI told her not to talk to the press, so she did what they said. Other people who were shocked were Jennifer's family, who agreed to settle the case with the cruise company for $1 million. They thought Jennifer was hiding something here. It didn't take Jennifer long to defend her. She said she really doesn't remember anything about that night after 2:30 a.m. Even the fact that she was wheeled to her room and slept in the hallway get away from her. Even though what she did was questionable, there's no proof that she was in the room when George was attacked or fell. A $1 million settlement doesn't seem too fishy either. It is true that the amount of money is pretty small when you consider that George was probably killed, but it would be very hard to prove that the cruise company was somehow responsible. Plus, there isn't much evidence to go on, and Jennifer was probably very sad. I don't think this is too crazy. It was also the Smith family's fault that the Turkish police were not clear about sharing information about the case with George's family. In light of all this, the Smith family hired forensic scientist Henry Lee to help them figure out what happened to their son and answer the disturbing questions they had. Even though there was no more evidence, Henry was still able to do a number of tests in the cabin. By looking at the height of the balcony and railing, he was sure that George's fall wasn't an accident. George had to be pushed really hard for him to fall off the railing, but he also couldn't say for sure that George wasn't so drunk that he didn't pay attention to what he was doing, lost his balance, and went overboard, which would explain why the chair and hip mark were in such an odd place. When drunk, people do crazy things, and drunk people have fallen out of open windows many times before. But while this makes sense, I and most people who have looked into this case think there's a lot more to it than just an accident. Henry planned to recreate the fall both ways with the help of a dummy to see if the smudges on the ship's canopy supported one theory over the other. But this is where Royal Caribbean International stepped in and said they wouldn't let it happen. This left George's case even more unclear. The frustrating thing is that Henry's case results were kept secret, so we don't know what he found when he looked at the cabin and the balcony. All the while, the FBI was looking into Josh, Greg, Zach, and Rusty. However, that investigation also failed because there wasn't enough proof. In the end, Jennifer was not thought to be responsible by the Smith family. The lawsuit against the cruise company was settled for a slightly higher amount of $1.3 million, which was split between the Smith family and Jennifer. The FBI kept looking into it until 2015, when they finally decided there wasn't enough evidence to move forward with the case. George's death was officially ruled an accident. George hadn't been seen or heard from since January 7, 2015, which was almost 10 years ago. Josh, Zach, Greg, and Rusty are no longer suspects or even people of interest because of this decision. There is no one, not even the FBI or the Turkish government, who knows where George's body is. There is almost no chance that George's body will be found in the ocean, which covers 70% of the Earth. It has also been 20 years since he went missing. The Smith family was shocked and disgusted by what the FBI did. In a Facebook post, they said they were going to take George's case to the FBI office in New York. This is the right thing to do because they need answers. But we need to remember that the proof is gone. That's awful. Jennifer, on the other hand, got married again a few years later, in 2009. She has since spent her whole life doing charity work and has 2 children. The official word on George Smith IV's death is accident, but no one, not even I, believes that story. No one knows for sure if George fell off his balcony by accident or because one of the men with him pushed him. Even so, the fact that the Smith family is still looking for answers after almost 20 years is very scary and sad. There's no way for them to get George back, but they really need to do something so they can move on with their lives. Even more pain and suffering is caused by the fact that George's body has not been found and cannot be found. My heart truly goes out to the Smith family, who are living in fear and trying desperately to find answers 24 hours a day. We hope that they can find some peace, even though it will be hard for them since they don't know what happened to their son. That's it for this true crime case. If it gave you chills, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories that need to be told. I'd love to hear your take in the comments below. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and don't look away from the truth.